Thank you very much. Now let's begin by the first topic of that we will discuss in this panel. We will, you know, in these times between now and 2022, there is about 42% down of the amount of funding, and it's really, I think it's important to think that there is a switch of risk appetite, and there is great challenges that that are faced by the startups. For that, we'll begin with the first question with Ashraf, and I will say, how has investor risk appetite changed over the last few years, and which specific qualities do you think that it's important to have to help startups to fund money?
Thank you for the question, Walid. So the short answer is investors are getting more risk averse. So usually the preconceived notion we have is that VCs love risk. They are ready to invest in companies with a high risk, entrepreneurs usually with no track record and at very early stages. But now, and because VC is actually an asset class like every other asset class, the funding that VCs themselves are receiving from their limited partners is drying up. So in other words, VCs are not as able as they used to be to raise funds from institutional investors. And this comes down to a plethora of reasons, microeconomic reasons as well as macroeconomic reasons. So macro-wise, the cost of capital is getting higher. Interest rates all over the world are getting higher. You can check the LIBOR, the federal funds rate in the US. Recently, it reached a high of 5%. The same is happening in Tunisia. And when inflation hits and interest rates get higher, investors, institutional investors, they look for safety nets, and they prefer asset classes that are pegged to inflation. And VC is not pegged to inflation. If the interest rate is high, you prefer to not put your money in venture capital and to look for other financial instruments that are less risky. And this brings us to the point that VCs don't have as much funds as they used to be, and they won't be able in the future to raise as much funding as expected. Aside from macroeconomic reasons, there are microeconomic reasons. A lot of funds, especially in Africa, hit the end of their investment periods. If you remember, around 2018, 2019, a lot of VC funds were being launched in Africa. These VC funds don't invest anymore. Some of them made a lot of investments that didn't work out. So a lot of startups failed, and they took down with them a lot of VC funds returns. Adding to that, GFIs are not investing as they used to be. If we remember, a few years ago, IFC, USAID, the European Union, BPI France, all of them were pouring money into African VC funds. This is not the case anymore, unfortunately. So all of this can explain how VC funding is drying up. Now, how should founders react to such a challenging environment? First of all, they should adapt and try to turn their startups into camels. And by camels, I mean startups that prioritize sustainability and profitability among growth. So the traditional paradigm is that VCs are looking for growth, and they are ready to sacrifice every other aspect of the business for the sake of growth. Apparently, this is not the case anymore. So startups should try to be as profitable as possible, and they should sustain themselves with their own resources, because that VC life cycle is not, apparently it's not working as it used to be. So to make it simple, founders should try to be resilient by focusing on the pillars or on the basics of the business. Try to generate revenue as much as possible, reduce expenses, and not wait for that VC round to save them. In the opposite, better try to have to enhance their cash management and to have a cash runway as long as possible.
Thank you, Ashraf. Patricia, I want, in taking in account what Ashraf said, do you think that now VCs prefer shift to late-stage startups, and do you think that early-stage startups have more? There is a place for them now for investment.
So yeah, I agree with you, Ashraf, on the risk aversion part. However, as a VC fund, I mean, we have a certain mandate. So a fund, especially as an institutional fund, you're not necessarily deviating from your mandate. So if you're an early stage fund, you do early stage. If you're a later stage fund, you do late stage. What has changed maybe, or what we've seen, is that funds have refocused maybe more on their core, while VC funds used to take bets outside of their mandate a little bit, like they did a little bit of early stage. Like for us, for example, we have a seed pocket with our fund. We kind of stopped that a little bit during the downturn. We're now looking at it again. So our funds that may have been focused more on fintech, for example, they may have done some bets in the marketplace and got burned, and so now they stopped. So there is a bit of a more targeted strategy that we see, and funds are being more careful, but the way they are reducing the risk is not necessarily changing the stage of the business, but it's more changing the way they assess the businesses, so looking more at different types of metrics, doing a longer DD, these type of things. So getting in early may actually also be a good thing, because now exit expectations have been revised. So if you get in earlier, that also means that you can potentially exit at a higher multiple. So I would not say that early stage startups don't have a chance. I also feel that the climate has been starting to warm up again, like it's been slow, and we expect to see more in 2025. But we think that like the initial panic has gone, and a lot of startups have rethought the way they do business. And so there is investors now that appreciate that and that are investing again.
Okay, thank you. Now I will try to talk about another topic in this challenging times. It's about virtual fundraising, and about this manner is changing also, I think, the manner of startups have to approach the VCs. For that, I will ask to Duja, what do you think about, we will try to talk about Tunisian startups. Do you think that they took this the shift to try to ask for money differently and use a more virtual platform? And which kind of success stories can you tell us about this?
Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. I think it's the way they are doing today, because first of all, with technology, world is open actually, and everybody is connected. We have the ecosystem is already the accelerator and the incubator are connected with other, with the VCs, with the investors, and with other incubators and accelerators around the world, and they give the startups the opportunity to pitch and to present their products and their startups all around the world. So we are seeing today all our Tunisian startups pitching and presenting their projects virtually, of course, but also participating in such kind of events like Africa Arena here and in other countries and other events to show up and to pitch their project looking for VCs. And I see that a lot of my fellows, they say, the people I'm supporting, the startups I'm supporting, they are always pitching online in many countries, no borders today between VCs and startups. But I want to say something important, that opportunities are here. The VCs are also connected and looking for good opportunities and good startups around the world, but startups should be really ready for that, because it's not a good thing to start to have like first contacts and first good impression with VCs and investor, and not continue very quickly discussing the opportunity. So startups should prepare themselves very well, having very structures, data room with all the information needed by the investors and the VCs, and the opportunities are there. When they start, they have really continue very quickly discussing the opportunities.
Thank you. Henry, when we talk about digital fundraising, virtual platform, we talk also about digital cloud and how AWS, for example, helps startups in kind of things. And do you think that this trend will be a really long-term trend?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot for that question. So I'm going to actually bring up a bit of a summer in the winter. If you go into the actual data regarding funding, past 6 months, past previous 6 months, fintech is up by 50%. Now, why is that important? It means that this winter is about to shift. There's a lot of interest. Now, how does AWS work with startups? Now, we've worked with startups for more than 17 years, and I think I mentioned that earlier, and I want to explain the context here. There's a report from Harvard Business Review that talks about how much did it cost to build an MVP. So that's your first product to prove that there was a buyer in 2005. That was $500,000 during 2005. During 2010, around when AWS launched the AWS cloud services like compute services, database services, and what this meant is the cost dropped by $50,000 to $50,000, right? So that's still a big number to do a pre-seed, you know. Right now, it's estimated that an MVP, on average, will cost you $5,000. Now, what has that done, according to Harvard Business, for the investors in startups in, well, even Africa Tech? Number one, the ticket sizes can be smaller. It means also that they can spread investment across numerous investments. Now, knowing Africa, 54 countries, if you wanted to invest, like, let's say, launch Africa in 20 countries, you can only do this in a digital fashion, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, what also this meant is because we're working with the investors understand one offering that we do with startups, besides the cost reduction. We have a technical due diligence for startups, and we fund this document, this output. Now, this is very important. This document looks after security scale, resilience, compliances, if you're in the healthcare, HIPAA compliance, PCI compliances. So talking about the pace of the investment, as you mentioned earlier, having that document available will accelerate the actual investment going on. So AWS really assists in that way. Then when you join, let's say Flat 6 Labs, you get access to AWS Activate, which is a startup program in the early stage, great for cost reduction. But also what it does, it highlights you to global investors. Why is that important? Because more than 60% of all the investments in Africa Tech does not originate from this continent. So there's a very strong likelihood that your investor in today's context will come from offshore. And different mechanisms available that wasn't there before because of the digital nature. For example, revenue-based investments. So angel groups where you can pitch, accelerators like YC School is virtual, is online. This trend is not going to stop. This is actually good for us that there's a virtual means. Naturally, if you move up the science of investment, you go into Series A and you're looking for a $10 million or $100 million check, there's no way that investment will happen without a personal engagement. That's a big investment, right? But in the early stage, especially in the pre-seed stage, you definitely have the ability to raise funding digitally, and building on AWS will assist you in getting that funding because of the fact that you can actually attach the technical due diligence to your term sheet. That's the investor sheet that says you're going to do something for us, which is return, and how secure are you in terms of your build. So I hope that answered the question. I think we're doing quite well.
Thank you very much. Really, there is problem of organization, and I have really to be more to be very speed in my questions. For that, I will go to Samar, and I will ask 2 questions on one. The first one is to ask about in bridging, and that you use also virtual platforms. For that, I want to have, if you have some advice to give to startups, and also I will talk about another topic we have to talk about the sustainable business and the ESG in this winter.
Of fundraising.
Yes, and I want to have your what you think about all this, and what kind of advice you can put in this question.
Thank you very much, Wally. Thank you for the invite, everyone here, and thank you for the subject, because I think all startups here are suffering, but also VCs, etc., from this period where we find that opportunities are not there as usual, and startups are struggling to raise funds. I agree with all what have been said, mainly on the fact that during this period, startups need to be more resilient. And so resiliency is something very, very important, I think, and tightly linked with ESG. Why? Because when we speak about a startup or in a company in general that is aware of ESG constraints and conditions, they will be more looking for long-term return rather than, very fast return like fast fashion or something like that. So it is really something very, very linked to resilience. And during these downturn periods, we need this resilience in startups and companies in general, which can be so realized through the awareness of these companies, these startups, by the environmental, social, and governance good governance rules, including when fundraising is very difficult. So since we don't have a lot of time, I will not, maybe we can discuss later on, but I wanted to pass this message that ESG really is something important for startups willing to raise funds, because it is a generational shift. It is no longer something that we do, just to please some maybe fundraisers that are eager to have ESG companies in their portfolio. We no longer do this as something external or to respond to external constraints. It is a generation shift. Generation Z is really, linked to these purpose in their everyday jobs. They select companies, startups, etc., in order so that they have purpose in their daily job. So they can attract talents, good talents like that. They can also seduce more customers, so bring cash, bring revenue, thanks to these ESG rules. So it is no longer something we will do for a specific period or a specific purpose, but it is really something that is compulsory, and all startups why startups need to focus on that. Now to come back maybe to the virtual platform or the virtual tools we are using, honestly we don't use more than Teams or Google Meet in order to organize our pitches. There is no specific platform we are using in order to invest or something like that. So yeah, of course, nowadays we have a lot of tools that will AWS and other platforms that can help startups reach globally investors worldwide, etc. So this is very good. But during winter, during fundraising winter, I think the 90% or 99% of the CEO time should be dedicated to how to gain customers, how to generate revenue, how to make my business sustainable and to beneficial. So these are the main subjects on which the CEO should be focused. Fundraising, okay, digital platforms, okay, but if they have time or if they have a really, really sound strategy in order to reach their targets because they have, you know, a very solid connection, for example, with someone abroad or that will allow this connection. But they shouldn't spend more time on trying to raise funds everywhere through platforms if they don't focus on their core business, as it has been said, I think, before, and focus on gaining customers and generating revenue. So.
Thank you, Samar. Like I said, you are really, we have to be really fast. I want to, for each of you, I want just like a general remark about an advice that you want to say to each startup who is here, and also talking about such sectors that you think they can really be more profitable and more fundraisable in such winter. Ashraf.
It's okay, I can go first. So I see like 3 sectors. Well, I don't actually like the word sector, but I will use it. So I see 3 sectors that will be getting more funding in the next few years, which are biotech, AI, mainly machine learning, and then every startup related to clean tech or like building clean tech solutions. AI funding raised by 15% in 1 year from 2022 to 2023, and clean tech raised by 20%. So these are indications that these sectors will receive more and more funding in the future. My advice would be try to sustain your startup using like the startup means as much as possible. Focus on traction, focus on the pillars, the basics of the business. And then fundraising will come. Fundraising is actually a result of you achieving more with your startup, generating traction, and managing your expenses in a better way. So this is it. Be a camel and try to ride the wave.
Thank you. Ashraf, the same question for you, Duja.
If I have something to say to startups is to really be agile, because they need, I agree totally to say that they have to be in the market, so they have to be agile to adjust their strategy whenever, whatever happen in the market. Continuous innovation and consistency, because it's not a very calm journey, we will say, so we need to be very agile, innovative and consistent.
Thank you, Duja. Harry, a word from you.
So I go first. I'd like to say that you're a company first, and that means you have to build the best fundamentals of a company before you're a startup. A startup is particularly a company that is looking for funding, going down the route of venture funding. But if you can sustain yourself as long as possible on being a company, for example, use tools such as zero accounting to be transparent, then you're doing yourself a favor, because you will focus on the most important metrics in any business, that's customer satisfaction and keeping your customers satisfied. And ESG was a great example that you can do that. And by the way, in AWS, we have a carbon footprint tool that you can actually share how you're improving your business going forward. If you're talking about segments, I always say that know where the funding is going. So I'm going to give you a $5 trick. Download Africa, the Big Deal database. You'll see all the segments, all the funding, all the investors currently active in Africa. Because when I was a founder, you would think that somebody is going to do an investment in your company, but you have an onus on yourself. And that is to make the research. Who is the right investor? Because it's not about the dollars. It is about the knowledge that that investor is going to distill, and the network. In other words, how do you scale your business? How do you grow your business? How do you hire your first CTO? Because in the beginning, you don't have a CTO. In fact, you're a CEO, everything, right? So do that, and then you will build a successful company. When you do the funding, yes, you're a startup, and you can move into the venture rounds going forward. Again, keep focused on the customer. That's really my biggest advice for everybody.
Thank you very much, Henry. We'll finish with you, Patricia.
Thank you. Agree with everything you've said, Henry. On the segments that investors are looking for now, it's probably more the type, like there are specific factors that some startups in some sectors showcase more than in others, which are, for one, international investor interests, because in Africa we haven't seen that many exits yet, so exit internationally is a big thing. Another one is in a sector where you are able to generate somewhat recurring revenue, or at least have a product that's very sticky, so customers keep coming back, so you don't have to spend a lot of money on marketing, because we cannot afford that if we cannot raise many rounds. Then another factor is having good unit economics, so having a positive, good gross margins, having a capital cycle, ideally where you get paid before you have to pay your suppliers. All those are fundamentals that are maybe there in certain sectors more than in others. That being said, doesn't mean that your startup cannot develop these fundamentals no matter which sector you're in. So some sectors that have been mentioned were fintech, obviously, potentially the second layer, not necessarily the typical mobile money anymore, but maybe some infrastructure plays, some specific features like credit scoring, like reconciliation, cross-border payments, these kind of things are stuff that we see. AI and software, although there is a lot to do in Africa still on the AI. Climate and deep tech now, because there's a lot of investors that are specifically pouring money into this field. So even if you do like more of a deep tech or more an asset heavy stuff, it doesn't mean that you cannot get funding. So these are things that we see. And the main point that investors are looking for now is that our capital is not used for working capital financing only, because that means that you as a company are going to have to go back to the market in 12 months from now, 24 months from now, and do the same thing over again. So investors are looking for companies that are raising for expansion, that are raising for R&D, that are doing something with the money, that is not just pouring cash into operations like big US startups that we all know have done in the past, which is just a reality that today in Africa we don't have the luxury to raise like 5 VC rounds before turning profitable. And my advice, leaning on to what Henry has already said, is surround yourself with good people. Especially in challenging times, it's very hard to do everything alone. So if you're bad with money, have a good CFO who helps you manage your money. If you are not a tech guy, have a good CTO that actually ensures that the money you got is invested into your product and is used in an efficient way. Have a good head of sales so that whatever cash you invest in marketing is actually transforming into revenue, and have supportive investors that in case you are facing challenging times, a supportive board also help you take the right decisions, and are there for you and have the possibility to follow on in you if you're raising an internal round.
Thank you very much for all of you, and I hope we can discuss more in the next time. Thank you very much.